I find it ironic that the Prime Minister is using a burner phone and all his staff over in China.
Carney's honeymoon is over. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we have Doug Ford absolutely going nuclear on Mark Carney. Just rips him apart in press conference after press conference. He is absolutely pissed that Mark Carney made that deal with Xi Jinping, which is bad for Ontario. We also have this Greenland situation blowing up. Pierre Poilievre came out with some statements on that. It's caused a bunch of stir as well. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got some new polling data. This is coming from Abacus data for Canadians under 30. Pierre with a commanding lead here, 50% to 27% for the Liberals. Now, when you incorporate everyone, including all the older folk who vote for the Liberals, this levels out at 40% for both parties. So it's a dead heat right now. Moving ahead, we have Doug Ford absolutely going nuclear on Mark Carney, just rips him a new one here. And before we get to that, let's just address this. So Germany's $3.5 billion electric vehicle subsidy program will be open to Chinese car brands. Isn't that convenient? Mark Carney opening the gates for Chinese EVs into Canada. And now you have this, says the government will not impose origin-based restrictions despite efforts to support domestic automakers. This is the same time where Mercedes is now building more infrastructure, expanding production in Hungary because the business case is not there in Germany. The decision benefits low-cost Chinese manufacturers such as BYD, which continue to expand in Europe. Even with EU tariffs on Chinese-made EVs, these companies remain profitable due to significantly lower production costs in China. So with that, we've got Doug Ford goes off on Mark Carney. I just want to play this clip first because he lays out the landscape of how to be profitable in Canada with a car manufacturer.
We're going to focus on making sure that we produce great vehicles here. China will never, ever, and this will go on record, open up a manufacturing facility, and I'm going to tell you the reason why. To make an assembly plant profitable, you need 200,000 cars manufactured here, and that's 2 shifts going full out and producing a vehicle every minute and a half. And out of that 200,000, they're going to ship 80 to 90% of the cars down to the U.S. And I don't believe that President Trump will accept any vehicles from China being manufactured here. So to say that we're going to bring assembly here from China is just not accurate whatsoever.
I don't like Doug Ford, but he's 100% accurate here. China won't open up a facility here because those Chinese-made EVs will not go down to America. Trump won't allow it. Now, there's that rumor I showed on the previous video that Trump is going to open it up as long as China makes them in America. I don't believe that. Anything's possible, I guess.
We have to focus on getting rid of the EV mandate. That's a killer for the sector, and not just keep pushing it down the road, because when they plan investment, they plan 4 or 5 years out where they're going to invest. I'm going to continue working collaboratively with the Prime Minister and all the other premiers. When we get together up in Ottawa, we'll have an honest discussion and find out what we're going to do.
Did the Prime Minister give up an awful lot without getting enough in return?
Well, I believe he did. He's hurting Ontario, and that's what I'm focused on.
Now, at this event here, the Roma conference, Doug Ford does not hold back. He just goes off on Carney. He's royally pissed because he knows this hurts his image to the people of Ontario, and he knows that Nate Erskine-Smith is going to be running. He'll probably be able to pull some of that NDP support back to the Liberals, and then Doug Ford's going to have a real problem here trying to win because there's a bunch of Liberals in Ontario that vote for Doug Ford, and if they go vote for Nate Erskine-Smith instead, he's going to lose his job. That's the Cole's notes of this. Doug Ford can say he's fighting for the people. He's fighting for his own job.
But we have the best autos in the entire world. And when you have cheap autos coming in, not to mention cybersecurity, and I don't even know how they're going to get across the border at $15,000 less than what we can manufacture, and promising they'll manufacture. Well, they aren't going to be manufacturing over 200,000 vehicles anytime soon here in Ontario. And that's the break-even point for any auto manufacturer here. And guess what, folks? 80 to 90% of those vehicles go south of the border. So I'm not too sure if President Trump wants Chinese spy vehicles coming across the border, but I'm betting the answer is no. You know, when you get on your cell phone, it's the Chinese that are going to be listening to your, and I'm not making this stuff up, they're going to be listening to your telephone conversation. I find it ironic that the Prime Minister is using a burner phone and all his staff over in China. But we're making a deal, it's Huawei 2.0, to come back into Canada, and we get nothing but potential job losses in our factories right across the board. And there's over 500,000 people that are employed in the auto sector. And that doesn't include all those families that go out and do their grocery shopping, buy clothes, maybe put an addition on their home. So this is a serious, serious matter.
Doug Ford cooking there. He's not happy with Carney. So to go back to a statement there about 200,000 vehicles per year, I think he's correct with this. And Mario had a good take on this. Mario Zelenya suspects that what China is going to do is invest money into another company like Hyundai, who already makes the largest market of EVs in Canada, and invest through them. They're not going to set up their own facilities and all that kind of stuff. We'll have to see what happens. I don't know if they're going to invest any money. They're just going to dump their cars in our country and then offer nothing back to Canada. That's also very possible too.
They say it's only 49,000 vehicles. Folks, it's really 33% of the EV sales in Canada. And once the camel gets his head in a tent, his whole body's in the tent, and you aren't getting rid of him. Remember this speech. And yes,
The camel thing is funny, but I mean, it would make more sense if he used panda bear since we're talking about China here. But anyways, I've never even heard that term. The camel gets his head in the tent. What implications does this have on Mark Carney's polling numbers? That's the question. Doug Ford, the premier of the most populated province, and a bunch of liberals voted for Doug Ford. If they're on Doug Ford's side here, they might be like, oh, Doug's right. I don't like what Carney did there. So where do these people go? Start voting Conservative, Green, NDP? Maybe we'll see a scatter of people in the polls and Carney's numbers drop. There's a lot of moving pieces here. Obviously, Carney going to do the deal with the devil twice over in Qatar and China. If that doesn't affect the polls, then it shows that Canadian population doesn't understand how bad things are over there, what really happens over in those countries. So we'll see here in the polling data in maybe the next week or two.
play this back a few years down the road. I can assure you this is not a good move. But I'll never apologize for standing up for our auto workers, and I will continue doing everything I can to protect their jobs and paychecks, including pushing the federal government to do the right thing. And I always say collaboration, cooperation, partnership. It was anything but a partnership. I found out about this deal, and the auto companies found out, by the way, a few hours before it was announced. So much for the partnership. In the meantime, we're creating new opportunities for Ontario workers by getting shovels in the ground.
He's full on burning the bridge here. I don't know if that cushy Carney Doug Ford relationship will ever go back to what it was before. He was not consulted at all about this situation. He talked about it in another press conference.
I never got an invite, but that's all right. I'm very close allies with Premier Moe. He's always a good ally, a good friend, and I'll help him any way we can.
Regret not being there in China, though. Critics say that you should have pushed your way in and been at the table.
Well, when you see the plane take off on the news and away you go, I'm not running down the runway to hold on to the wheels, I'll tell you that. So if he wanted me there, he'd ask me there.
He wasn't invited to go on the trip, and there's a reason for that, because Mark Carney knew what the deal was before he flew over there. He knew he was going to be cutting out Doug Ford. He let Scott Moe come in because he knew there was going to be a deal there for canola and peas and all that. And the reason why is because Mark Carney needs this for his grift. He needs this for his net zero agenda. He has to have EVs come back. I mean, Mark Carney in his own speech, he said, these are the vehicles of the future, yet Canadians are not buying them. But he needs them to be for the future because he's invested in everything, that all the supply chains that are tied to them. This is a guy running our country in a way to just personally profit off of it.
I'm disappointed, but it's all about communication and collaboration and partnership. They keep preaching it. Well, at least I know where I stand now.
What do you mean by that? Do you think that the Prime Minister kind of pushed you off to the side now and is not taking into account your views?
Well, when someone doesn't communicate and preaches partnerships and then goes out and makes a deal that isn't good for Ontario, you know where you stand. Hopefully we can continue working together and communicating a lot better than what happened when he went over to China.
Now, what's going to be confusing to a bunch of liberals as they hear Doug Ford talking about how Carney slighted him, didn't include him on this, is bad for Ontario. And then in this speech here, he essentially is not attacking Donald Trump. He's saying we should be closer to America, working with America, selling to America.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So with our American friends, and they are our friends, everyone I talk to down there, they need our energy. And they need it for the data centers and to make sure that they have enough energy to power their facilities and their homes.
So he goes on to talk about this. He mentioned this multiple times in different press conferences here. I won't show all of them, but he does go to talk about building, the AmCam fortress and all that kind of stuff, like integrated ties with America. So there's a lot of mixed messages, especially for liberals who voted for Doug Ford. Because what are they going to go with now? Are they going to trust the guy who just cushied up with a couple of dictators? Or are they going to trust the premier they voted for?
The Prime Minister knows my number. And I thought we had a good enough relationship that he'd give me a quick text or a little bit of communication. That never happened. That's fine. Like I said, I know where I stand with him.
Moving ahead, we've got Donald Trump. I showed you in the previous video, he's going to be applying tariffs to all these European countries that have pushed back against him and his desire to get Greenland. It's turned into a big kerfuffle, really. He came out with this post here saying NATO has been telling Denmark for 20 years that you have to get Russia threat away from Greenland. Unfortunately, Denmark has been unable to do anything about it. Now it is time. It will be done. President Donald J. Trump. Donald Trump also came out with this. He sent this over to the government of Norway, and now there's a big kerfuffle over this because, dear Jonas, the leader of Norway, considering your country decided to not give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars, plus I no longer feel obligation to think purely of peace, although it will be predominantly, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect the land from Russia or China, and they do not have the right of ownership anyway. There are no written documents. It's only a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I've done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you. This letter here is fueling the fire some more. I mean, to mention the Nobel Peace Prize and all that kind of stuff, I have no doubt that Donald Trump put this out because he is vengeful of this stuff. Is this childish? Yeah. And whether you like this letter or not, Donald Trump can put this out because he's in control of America. European allies are blowing up this whole situation. It's like the Kevin O'Leary thing of the signal and the noise. All this stuff is noise. It's really nothing. Really, they're just going to make an offer to Greenland to buy them. That's what this is. They're not rolling in tanks. They're not going to take them over. Of course, the European allies, the NATO allies have all blown this up into something it really isn't. It's all noise. Do I think this is a good look? No, this doesn't look good. Pierre Poilievre came out with his statement saying it's unacceptable for U.S. to seize the territory of a sovereign country, including by threatening tariffs on other NATO countries. Greenland is a part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and we support its territorial integrity. Conservatives support NATO and Canada's obligation as a NATO member, and Canada should strengthen the NATO alliance and build our own forces in the Arctic to combat threats also coming from China and Russia to protect our seas, skies, and soil. Now, this has also riled up a bunch of people. Let's just break this down. So we have a bunch of creators here like Pleb Clyde, Jeff Easley, Yukon Strong, Sunshine, all commenting on this, all saying this is bad, another bad take, way to keep the elbows up. In reality, all of these guys' takes here, they're not wrong for being angry at this post because all these guys are very strong Trump supporters or are American or are moving to America. So I'm not surprised. I don't hold it against these guys for being angry at Pierre for putting this out. But in reality, this is the right take, to the right stance on this. Pierre Poilievre is not running to be the vice president of America. He's running to be the prime minister of Canada. Now, I don't think Donald Trump is trying to annex Greenland with military force. That whole part of it is blown out of proportion by the EU and NATO allies. But if you look at it from the perspective of China, they are planning, they keep saying they're going to take over Taiwan. You compare it to apples, if Donald Trump was serious about taking over Greenland with military force, then you would be comparable of comparing him and what he's doing to what China is doing with Taiwan. Now, I don't think that's comparable because he's just going to offer them money. And if it's not enough money, I think he'll just offer them more money. Donald Trump knows the critical minerals in Greenland are incredibly valuable. They need them for their military. There's also this new Arctic shipping route that's opening up as the ice melts. There's a bunch of things in play here. Here's another look at it. As the ice melts, then these shipping routes open up, which will also potentially open up one to the Hudson's Bay and shipping out oil that way if we ever do build a pipeline. You look at the numbers of it. There's 57,000 people in Greenland. If Trump offers $100K to all of them, that's $5.7 billion. If he offers $1 million to every single one of them, that's $57 billion. That's nothing. They spend over $1 trillion on their military spend every year. It just comes down to how much money are they going to pay for it. On that other report I showed you yesterday, it said $700 billion to pay for it. Is that the case if they have to offer the country, the government money, and then the citizens money? I don't know. It gets complicated, but this all comes down to money. He's not going to roll in there with tanks and all this stuff. Regardless, you look at what Pierre Poilievre said here. If he came out in full support of Donald Trump annexing Greenland, that would look so awful. The leftist mainstream media, CBC, CTV, they would just run with that for weeks and weeks and weeks. He can't give them ammo. And not only that, that's the wrong stance for a Canadian prime minister. Pierre Poilievre is a prime minister in waiting here. People don't like how wild Donald Trump is with this whole Greenland talk. Really, it just needs to come down to a financial negotiation. I thought Anne Brandt really nailed this. So in regards to Pierre's post, he says, this statement is fine. Look, as a guy who likes Trump, we've noticed the cheese sliding off the cracker more and more recently. I think it would be great for the USA to have Greenland, but threatening more tariffs in late night Truth Social posts isn't the way to do it. Let Rubio negotiate something instead of blowing up markets. S&P futures down 1.22%. From making fun of Rob Rayner publicly after his and his wife's murder to threatening letters over Nobel Peace Prize and incoherent babble doesn't help. And the GOP is going to lose their midterms because of it. Self-sabotage isn't helping anyone. Why blow it up because of poorly thought out midnight rants? I replied to him here saying that this is a good take. And then he said Alaska was a brilliant purchase. Nobody would was mad about that. This freak out could have been avoided. And yeah, I'm looking past all this noise. He's not going to invade them. It's just going to be a financial offer that this is going to be there. But of course, everyone else is going crazy with this. We even have Keir Starmer saying that he doesn't think that Donald Trump going to invade Greenland, this is not a real thing. It's just Donald Trump doing his thing where he hypes it up and then he pulls it back to get what he wants from a deal. The whole taco, Trump always chickens out that thing.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
Do you think Donald Trump is genuinely considering military action?
Look, I don't, actually.
The Prime Minister predicted that the US would not actually invade Greenland and hinted at the true scale of the transatlantic partnership.
The interaction on intelligence between the US and the UK is the closest relationship of any two countries in the world. And that keeps us safe. In ways I can't explain to you.
This is really rich coming from the guy who's allowing a Chinese embassy to be built right by sensitive information cable in the UK. Like, all these guys are corrupt. Germany is corrupt. UK, France, so many of these European countries are completely compromised. But regardless, he doesn't think that Donald Trump is going to invade Greenland. It's all just noise and chatter so he can make an offer to buy them. I thought Wyatt had a great take on this too. A lot of people having a cow over this post for no reason. Greenland's situation is stupid and likely to blow over soon, but Poilievre putting out this politically diplomatic statement is important because it takes away the chance for the Liberals and the legacy media to try to deflect to Greenland when Conservatives go after Mark Carney for cozying up with China and Qatar. And he hits that one right on the button there. We don't want to give them ammo when Mark Carney just cozied up with two regimes that have human rights violations, like rampant violations. We don't want to give any ammo to the mainstream media to attack Pierre Poilievre on this annexation stuff. Pierre's statement here isn't wrong. This is the right move.
What do you see as the potential political implications for Carney if, in fact, he sends over troops to participate in drills on Greenland?
Well, it's almost bound to capture the notice of the White House and presumably put him on the naughty list as far as Trump is concerned. So, you know, if we actually take the extent of sending troops as part of a broader effort on the part of NATO to say we respect the security and the integrity of Greenland, I work under the assumption that Trump will take offense to that and he will voice that. What's good about this, if there is anything good, is that we will probably see a pull aside, that's diplomatic speak, for a quick one-on-one conversation between the Prime Minister and Trump. And hopefully that'll happen on Wednesday. Hopefully that gives Prime Minister Carney an opportunity to steer the conversation in a direction that's a little more productive in terms of bilateral relations. However, and this is important.
We can't talk about Mark Carney and being productive. He could have already got a deal. He doesn't want to. He's serving the interests of the dairy cartel in Quebec. That's why he hasn't gotten a deal with Donald Trump. And really, Carney shouldn't be doing any of this nonsense. He shouldn't even put out that he's considering putting troops there. We don't have a deal with all those main sectors that Trump's hitting with tariffs. The Kuzma negotiations coming up here. Carney's piddly deal in China and Qatar has very little effect on the Canadian economy compared to our trade with America. He has no leverage to push back against Donald Trump. The Americans right now, they have way too much power.
It will temper, therefore, what the Prime Minister says before that pull aside, because one of the consequences of speaking too loudly, too brashly in advance of that pull aside is that Trump could cancel it. So that's yet another factor that Mr. Carney is going to have to weigh.
Yeah, and it's nearly impossible to predict how Trump will respond to anything. Were you surprised that he seemed sort of supportive almost of Canada doing a deal with China at the end of last week? He didn't seem too put out or put off.
Yeah, you know, this is the weird contradiction of Trump. That clearly was just his gut talking. And you almost got the sense that he was saying, yeah, I respect Carney. I mean, obviously, if I'm going to give him the gears, he's going to go find what he can elsewhere. I'm a deal maker. I respect the fact that he's struck a deal with China. But we saw the counterbalancing voices from his administration very quickly. Jameson Greer is his top trade dignitary coming out and saying this is problematic. And, you know, we see Bannon, Steve Bannon, the podcaster, former senior advisor to Trump, a leader in the MAGA movement, pounding on the airwaves saying that you can't trust Carney, that he's practically seditious. So it's going to be interesting to see how Trump responds. What's his take on this beyond his immediate reaction?
And that's what I said. That was likely Trump's honest reaction. Like, he respected a guy going out and getting a deal. But then when it comes back a couple days later, though, you got Trump, the negotiator. He's talked with his team. Then he's just going to come back with something else. And he's not going to show his hand at how he's going to react to Canada with Carney going out making that deal with China. So I'm not surprised he came out with that. He did the same thing with the Doug Ford ad. And I don't know if he's going to clap back anytime soon. With all this stuff with Greenland, he's preoccupied with that. He might clap back next week or 2 weeks from now. Nobody knows. And that's the way Donald Trump likes to roll things. He likes to keep everything unpredictable.